In China last night, the 370 most senior Communist Party members emerged from a 4-day love-in. Well, it might have been a brutal affair rather than a love-in, but they were locked away in talks. And they emerged professing unprecedented love for their president, Xi Jinping. Already deemed president for life, he's now been elevated by his comrades to the status as one of the party's 3 most respected leaders of all time. This so-called ideological crowning sees him ranked with the founder of Communist China, Mao Zedong, and the man who followed in Mao's footsteps and led the nation in the 70s and 80s, Deng Xiaoping. Experts say to criticise Xi now will be to criticise the party. Do so, as ever, at your own risk. Part of the official statement said, the Central Committee calls upon the entire party, the military and all Chinese people to rally more closely around the Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, to fully implement Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, and to champion the great founding spirit of the party. How nice for the Chinese president, but how worrying is it for us? Let me bring in Liberal Senator and retired Major General Jim Molan. Jim, good to talk to you again. This is not normal, is it? They are almost deifying Xi Jinping at the moment.
Well, I think that's quite correct, Chris, and I don't think it's fair. It's not fair because we can't make President Biden a god. We can't make Scott Morrison a demigod. And Paul Keating, as an ex-god, is still bringing down pronouncements from on high. And I think it's quite unfair. But put that to one side, it really worries me that China is clearing the decks. And if we look at a dozen different things, there is a record amount of dissatisfaction within the Chinese people, expressed in a Chinese way, of course, which is very restricted. And this brings all the power into one person. Why? Possibly because they need to control the country, the most controlled country, and Mao Zedong would have lusted after this level of control of a population. Maybe because they need to control the population, but maybe because they see sometime in the next period of time, possibly 3 to 5 years, within 3 to 5 years, they need to go to the extreme and use military force. That's what worries me.
Yeah, that is the worry, as if they're getting prepared for a very streamlined, if you like, an unchallenged operation in the country. And there's some more worrying information come to light today, and that is satellite imagery of fake US warships in the Chinese desert, used as targets. Again, look, they would normally be doing some sort of military preparations, but what do you make of these revelations?
Well, I think, again, this reinforces the view that they are preparing for something quite unusual, and bells should be ringing across the democratic nations of the world. All of us in the military, when we're conducting operations, know the location of every surveillance satellite in the world. We can pull up programs which tell us when surveillance satellites pass over us. And I've done it on military exercises in the past. And we limit our movements to the times when there is either less satellite surveillance or no satellite surveillance. So I would suggest that this is determined by the Chinese for us to find. If they wanted to hide this, they could have hidden it. But out in their Western China missile range, where they practice their missiles, and below the strategic level of missiles, they have the best missile and rocketry force in the world, bar none. So they're out there practicing on this. And what are they practicing for? They're practicing to destroy American aircraft carriers. They have a particular missile which can be corrected mid-course to go out into the middle of the sea, into the middle of the Pacific Island, into the first, probably into the second island chain, out towards Guam, and destroy an American aircraft carrier with 5,000 people on board. So they're saying to us, regardless of what you do, how good you are, how brilliant your Navy air power is, we can touch you and we can destroy you.
Very briefly, Jim, because we're nearly out of time, you mentioned Paul Keating. What do you make of this kowtowing to Beijing? And is it reflective of a deeper view within the Labor Party? Because Bob Carr, for instance, the former foreign minister, makes similar arguments.
Yes, he does, but I don't see as much of it in the Labor Party, in my colleagues across the chamber and the Labor members that I talk to, not the hard left Labor members, but normally the Labor's right wing. Of course, we know what the Greens will say. I don't think it's that wide. I see great cooperation between us and the Labor Party within the Parliamentary Joint Committee Intelligence and Surveillance, Intelligence and Security, and we work well together. I think they have the interests of the nations, except for these guys who come from a different base of thought, who are outdated and are appeasers of China.
That is good to hear, Jim, and it's good to hear you sounding so sharp and robust. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
Senator Jim Molan there, a great Australian, and great to hear him sounding so well. As you know, he's been through some really difficult health challenges over the past year.